don't normally work on a single monitor. I usually use a dual monitor with a TV set up the top here for my output preview. But today I want to put everything onto a single screen so I can just simply swap my screenshots between Resolve and Vegas and talk to you about the ways these various aspects work. So here's the basic layout of the Resolve screen. This is Resolve 19 Studio. And we've got a timeline here where all the video and audio tracks are laid out along in a typical fashion. And the controls for each of the tracks are over here on the left. And then I've got the media pool to the extreme left in this view, and a monitor here of my output program. I could also put an input view as well if I switch between single screen and two screens, but I'll go with the one for this exercise. That's all we need. So if I go to the Vegas screen, by comparison, it's much the same. There's the timeline here with all the video and audio tracks, the controllers for each track here, and the media pool up here, and the monitor here. And again, I can choose between having a trimmer view of my input shots or that, or both, in fact. And I've got an audio output up here, a monitor for my audio. Equally, I have an audio monitor if I choose to turn it on in Resolve. Going back to the basics of the layout here, Resolve has a series of tabs along the bottom. This one is your media tab, which shows you all of the media, and you can here arrange the layout of your media, where they're stored. You can arrange things like smart bins and so on, and you can also preview the media clip by clip, and you can move along in each clip like this just by moving the cursor inside the image of the clip, or up here on the top by moving the slider along like that. And you can also choose your in and out points in this way. The next tab along is the cut tab, which I haven't used extensively at all yet, but it's a very fast way of editing, rather different conceptually to the normal edit tab, but it's a very fast way of getting to a reasonably good cut with minimal effort. The full Monty is available here in the Edit tab, and you've got all of the possibilities that you need here. Fusion is where a lot of the special effects happen. Fusion is a whole different world that will be the subject of another video at some stage. Each of these nodes can do many things, and you can add all sorts of different nodes to do everything from painting images in a rotoscope style to adjusting all sorts of graphic effects and three-dimensionality and so on. It's an immensely powerful component of this software. Here we have the color tab. This is where all the color correction can happen, and this is incredibly powerful and very nicely set out, again with a few more tabs to work your way through. You've got camera raw, color match, color wheels, HDR grading, an RGB mixer, and motion effects, and they all have sub-menus that come to life as you work through the process. Then you've got this massive component called the Fairlight page, which is basically the full Fairlight synthesizer software. These are all your mixer tracks. So if I play something, you'll see wherever there's a track, these things light up in various ways. You've got control room output, loudness output, and immense numbers of options in there. And in the inspector for this, you get all of the different audio things you need, including a whole range of special effects, including all of your VST effects. And finally, there's the delivery tab, the little rocket ship, which lets you, as I've said, browse to the folder to save into and all the parameters for saving. And off it goes when you hit the render all. It renders very fast, actually. It renders in about, for this project, it rendered in about 1/3 of real time. which was very fast on the same machine as with Vegas. In Vegas, again, you have, I'll just go back to the whole view, but you've got, again, a similar array of tabs. Here you've got the Explorer tab, which is just basically a version of your Windows Explorer, which can show your computer and so on, and your network. You've got your project media, all the media that have been used in the project here are all available. So you can check these out, choose your in and out points, play clips, etc. The trimmer's very useful. Vegas Hub is an online portal that lets you share work with other users and also do all sorts of things, have access to stock media, free footage, learning options and so on, and expansion packs as required. And then there's the video effects, which are very extensive, a huge range, which can also be broken down into the styles. There's the artificial intelligence tab, creative tab, color tab, utilities, and so on, right through to third party and favorites. And then you've got a media generator. Media generator lets you generate everything from text to credit rolls to noises to solid color, text patterns and titles, and so on. Lots of possibilities all set up, and you can customize each of these, of course, and save them as one of your own. Transitions, a large number of transitions, all sorts of effects, all of which pre-animate to show what they're going to look like, and you can choose, and again you can modify them and save them as another preset. Again, you've got 3D effects, reveals, wipes, fades, loops and peels, third party and favorites in there. That's in the transitions. You've got project notes, which lets you write some text in here, notes for other people to access and add to, and you've also got the option of manipulating these. Once some issue has been addressed, you can indicate that within the project notes. Again, it's not that dissimilar to what happens in Resolve, although to get to your various other tools, you go up here. For example, if I want to render here, I go up to render, render as, choose my format, and render. A lot of functions happen through these top menus. Insert various things, various tools, all sorts of scripting options and extensions, multi-camera editing is done here, and so on. The options let you choose all of your preferences basically, and you can actually export and import your preferences into another version of Vegas later on if you get a new version, and so on. One thing you can do very easily and very helpfully is when you've got a TV attached to your system, you can detect it now appears as a third monitor, and in Vegas I simply go in here and choose preferences, preview device, display adapter. I go to number 3, and now if I press this little preview button up the top here, preview video, then my video appears on the TV, which is extraordinarily handy for getting a nice real-time preview for all sorts of purposes such as colour adjustment and the exact framing, the possibility of losing things at the edges and so on. In Resolve, that's also possible, very simple. You simply go to Workspace, Video Clean Feed, and choose Monitor 3, and there's your clean feed again from the timeline in Resolve. So in both systems it's extremely easy to get that very desirable monitoring on a large monitor. And so you can get a graphics display now on a single monitor or a couple of monitors if you want to. These are all coming out of my single graphics card in my computer. You can buy additional devices from Blackmagic Design to display in more complex ways, including in with an SDI stream, but for my purposes this is all I need. You can change the layout of the tracks reasonably easily in Resolve. You can just adjust the height of a track, and there you see the waveform appearing in the track. You've got the usual controls for soloing or muting the track, and the same applies to the video tracks. And you hold down Shift and your mouse wheel to decrease or increase the height of individual tracks. In Vegas, it's much the same. The wheel adjusts the zoom view very easily in Vegas, and I use Shift, Control, and the up and down arrows to change all of the tracks simultaneously, or as in Resolve, I can just simply adjust the size of each track as needed. The properties of each clip or each track are controlled within the clip. So for example, if I go here to this clip here, which is a shot of me standing on the beach talking about the drone, I've got at the end of that clip, I've got a controller here, the pan crop box, which shows me a window which shows the size and position. I've got a handy match source or match output aspect button here. I can flip vertical or flip horizontal, and I can restore changes to 0. I can also use keyframes along here. So for example, if I go to there, a keyframe has been added to the track, and you can see this is where it goes from there on. It's now on a close-up of me, as you can see up here. I just delete that keyframe to go back to the normal full view. In Resolve, it's slightly different. The properties are not available in the actual clips, but they are up here in the inspector, which has everything from transformations to cropping, dynamic zoom, composite features such as opacity, speed changes, stabilization, lens correction, and so on. And they're all there to be used as needed. Now, and you clip on each one and the detailed properties appear. And also you've got the possibility of using keyframes. It's important to realize that if you click on this top button up here, the top little diamond inserts a set of keyframe possibilities into the individual clips. I'll show you about that in just a moment, but that's very important to remember. And so if I want to change the properties of this clip, I simply click on this little marker down here to the bottom left of the monitor, and now I've got some little handles that I can use to change my view of the clip. And you can see these numbers are changing as I move the anchor points. I can return it to its correct value, default value, by just clicking on this little return to arrow up here, and everything goes back to as it was. And you can choose whichever way you want to do it. So that's how things are generally controlled. It's using the pan crop window in Vegas within each clip to make your changes and to add keyframes and make dynamic changes over time. And in Resolve, it's through the operation of the inspector, which controls all of those internal functions fairly easily. There's a difference in Resolve between the way I've always operated in Vegas and in other NLEs, and that's that if you hit the delete key, you get a ripple delete. I'll go back on that. Alternatively, if I want to just delete a clip, you can see both the video and audio are highlighted in red here. I hit the backspace key, and that clip and its audio are both removed without any rippling. Now, old habits die hard, and I found it tricky from time to time. I inevitably hit the delete key and get a ripple that I don't want. How do we do that in Vegas? In Vegas, it's different. If I want to delete a clip, say I'm here and I'm looking at this clip here, and I want to delete that clip, I go to my little button down the bottom here, which is my ripple delete button. The ripple button in Vegas can be set to affect only the affected tracks, or the affected tracks, bus tracks, markers and regions, or all tracks, markers and regions. And usually I leave it on all tracks, markers and regions. So if I just delete this clip here and hit delete with this button down here turned off, that clip just disappears. I'll put it back by Control Z. Now if I want to do a ripple edit, I press this button until it's highlighted down here, and I press delete. I haven't selected, I select that one, I set delete, and everything ripples down and all sorts of things happen. So I'll undo that one. One thing that I commonly need to do in Vegas is to move all of the tracks to the right to create a space on the timeline, because a lot of my editing is done actually on the timeline rather than through using the in and out points on a clip in the preview window. So for example, if I want to move all of the items from here to the right, I simply make sure that my ripple delete button is selected, and I just move that one and everything goes to the right, or it also goes back to the left if you want to, like that. I've got snapping turned on with my little magnet here, so that snaps back into position. There's no gaps, which is great. If I turn the ripple delete off in Vegas, and I just move that one clip. Now I can choose to move just the clip itself or the clip and its associated audio. You can see there I'm moving both together, but in Vegas if I just click this little button here, which is called ignore event grouping, I've now ungrouped the video from the audio, and I can move the audio by itself or I can move the video by itself. I'll turn that off normally. In Resolve, if I want to move everything to the right of that clip, I move my cursor to the point I want to move from, and now I click Alt-Y on the keyboard, and you'll see everything to the right has been selected, and I just move everything, and just as in Vegas, the same thing happens. It all moves and it clicks back because, yes, I've got my magnet selected here. It's highlighted next to the link key. Click back there and they all deselect themselves. So not too much difference there really. Things get interesting when you want to dissolve between two clips. In Vegas, if I want to dissolve between two clips, let's go to this one here. Let's go back to something pretty, one of the pretty shots at the front. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go into this one here. Now, if I want to dissolve between these two shots, in Vegas, all I need to do is either move the clip across like that by the number of frames I want, which are indicated in this little marker here. So that's a 15 frame dissolve, but I can make it anything I like, or I can simply grab the end of the clip and move it across, and I get the same indication. It snaps to 1 second to give you a 1 second dissolve easily, but it can be any number you like in that gap. Very easy to do a crossfade between two tracks. It took me a while to figure it out in Resolve, but it's actually not that dissimilar. I have to hit Alt and then my mouse key, or I can go up to the top here and select the detail zoom, which goes into the point at which my cursor is placed. And now I can't actually overlap clips. They won't overlap. They'll remove the clip to the left or right. So that's not the way you do dissolves in Resolve. What you do is right click and you can add a 12, 24, 50 or 100 frame cross dissolve very easily. There's a 1 second cross dissolve, and you can see that works. You're just dissolving between one clip and the next. I can undo that as before. The fact that there are little green bars showing on here indicates that there's enough frames available to do a dissolve between the two clips. And that's important. If it's not possible, one of the sides, say it's the beginning of a clip, that will show up as red and you won't be able to do a dissolve. So it's all pretty much there as you'd imagine. What about opacity? Well, opacity has always been incredibly easy in Vegas. One of the many reasons I've always loved it. Where's a pretty shot with something beneath it? Yeah, okay. Down here at 6 minutes 57. And we've got a shot of the screen of my Mavic controller, and below that is a shot of the rocks, and below that again in the third channel is the shot of me on the beach, all in sync. Now, to change the opacity and reveal the clip below, I simply go to this little pointer in the middle of the clip, or else anywhere along the top of the clip, and it becomes a little pointing finger, and that just lets me change the opacity down and reveal the clip below. And if I do that to the next clip down, I do the same thing, and there's me on the beach. So changing opacity in Vegas is extremely easy on every clip. At the beginning, you get little triangles, and you can do a fade into that clip like that, and you can adjust the length of that by as much as you want it. Being told here that's 1 second or 17 frames, 10 frames, whatever. It's all displayed for you. And if you right click on that region, you get the option of the fade type, which lets you choose precisely which fade type you want. It defaults to this one, which is a nice smooth one, very easy on the eye. And there's your fade in. Now in Resolve, it's not quite that simple. You actually have to go into the inspector, and you go down to composite opacity, and you change the opacity of your clip by doing this, moving this opacity slider across. And that's okay. You can choose the mode of composite from a whole range of options, but normally it's left at normal. So opacity you can't do it on the clip itself, but you have to go to the inspector and remove and reduce the opacity that way. There is an option. If I press Alt and Control wheel, you can see here I've actually activated the little keyframe at the top here, and so I've got 2 extra icons appearing now. I'll just expand this clip a little bit to show you in more detail. There's the clip, and there's the little icons I'm talking about. If I click that, this opens a new lane which has the opacity on it, and so if I get 2 little arrows when I put the mouse over it, I can bring that down, and that will reduce the opacity of that clip, as you can see at the top. You can also insert keyframes as you want to, of a certain sort here, beginning, ending, or mid, and linear ones, and then you remove that to get rid of it. Now if you want to insert a keyframe, you simply Alt click on that line, and every time you do that you get a new keyframe. So I can grab this middle bit here and bring it down. You can see I've now got an envelope in there, which is all good. I'll put it back to where it was. I'll just click on those, and you click delete, and they go away like that, and I'll put the opacity back up to 100, and I'll get rid of that envelope. In Vegas it's quite a bit easier. You go to your track header on the left over here, and you go insert, remove envelope, and I'll choose composite level, and now there's a special envelope at the top of the whole track which applies to the whole track, and I can alter the opacity of everything. I'll just go back, I'll do that to the top track actually so we can see it more easily. Insert, remove envelope, composite level, and now we've got a composite level track here, and you can see how that reduces the opacity. Now, the big advantage of this is that anywhere along here I can double click and get keyframes. So just as I did in Resolve, I can now produce a changing envelope, which lets me manipulate the opacity in time along the clip. And not surprisingly, the same thing happens with audio in Vegas. You go to your track header, we'll find a nice clear audio, bit of my narration. And for some reason, during the import of this edit decision list from Resolve, these opacity envelopes, or in this case the volume envelopes for the audio clips, all came down to this low value, but normally they should be back up there. Again, you can do a right click on the header and insert a volume envelope for the whole track, and now we do the same thing. We can double click anywhere and change the volume as required. I'll just go back and remove all that. Right, so we're back where we started. So changing the audio volume in Resolve is a matter of enlarging your clip to the point where it's useful, like that. I can decrease them and increase these a lot and move them down. So that's one of the things I find tricky in Resolve, is that the way the video clips are handled. For example, if I take this audio and move it down to another track, the video changes as well, and I don't understand that. It's a little odd. There must be a reason, but it actually removes the clip that's already there, and I don't want to do that. In Vegas, if I want to do that, I simply move the clip down and nothing else changes. The clip just goes to the next track down. Put it back there. Changing the volume of a clip in Resolve is a matter of moving your mouse up to the point where it becomes two arrows, and there's a line under there which is in fact a volume line, and you can see that does exactly what you'd expect. It changes the volume. To do things like fading in and fading out, you have to go to the inspector for audio, and here you've got a volume control, you've got a pan left and right, you've got voice isolation, a dialogue leveler, and a music remixer, all sorts of very useful, an equalizer, speed change. So all the controls you need. Again, in Vegas, they're available via a box down here in each clip. In Resolve, you need to go to the inspector for audio. That's okay, that makes sense. And there's keyframes for all of this, and again, reset arrows if you want to go back and reset. So changing the volume up here does the same as changing the volume down here in the clip. Sometimes I find it easier to do that. Now, I've set this up again in Resolve so that I've added a keyframe to the top of the clip, and now we have, as you'd imagine, a keyframeable envelope in its own little space below the track. It does the same thing, changes the volume, and again you Alt-click to get keyframes, and you can change your volume just as you see here. And you can do, as complex as you like. Now I'll just remove those and put it back the way it was. Put it back to 100. No, I won't. I'll put it back to where it was, which is about 5, minus 5, minus something like that, about there. So the difference really in Vegas is that everything happens in the clip itself. So here's our audio clip, and everything happens in the clip. In Resolve, everything happens in this extra panel that's added when you click down here, and that's there now. I'm sure you get very used to this very fast. It's just one of two extra steps that for me, which I prefer not to do. It also alters the geometry of the timeline, which doesn't happen in Vegas. So they're just little subtle differences between the two pieces of software. For this video, I simply exported everything from, there we go, export timeline, and I chose I tried various options, but the one that worked best was to export for Final Cut Pro an XML file, and that was exported, and that simply imported into Vegas, and I got essentially this, that is the whole thing imported perfectly. Once it found the clips that were required, I had to do a bit of searching to find those, but the whole project imported frame perfect, which was great. It didn't import the titles. That's okay. Titles had to be redone, and the only glitch was that it altered the, as you can see, the little blue lines here. It altered the volume position to minus 15.4 throughout. I just had to go through and return those to where they should be at 0, and that was easy. One thing I wanted to show in my review video was how the iris diaphragm of the Hasselblad camera changes as the aperture is adjusted in real time, and that worked out fine. What I had to do very simply was to manipulate a close-up of my screen of the controller and then crop that down so that I had just the bit that I wanted, and then move that into position over the clip of the Hasselblad camera, and then make the changes in real time. And here's what you see. Here goes. These numbers are changing, the f-stops are changing, and the diaphragm is changing in dimensions as well. That was very simple once I got it worked out, but it took me a little while to work out exactly how to position this piece and crop it to the right size. And if I look at my cropping window, they're the numbers that have been applied to it. I won't change it because it'll mess it. I suppose I can, just for the sake. I'll just go like that, and you can see how the size changes, and the actual cropping of the top and bottom can be changed. If I crop the top, crop the right, say, if I go there, it crops out more or less, and so I just put it back to where it was. There we go, that's where it was. So pretty straightforward in Resolve once you figure out the steps involved. And then in Vegas, the same thing can be done. I haven't done it correctly here, I haven't finished this, but you basically use the same steps. I would use picture in picture. In this case, I'd go to the effects button here and I'd go picture in picture. Now my preview window becomes active, and I simply change the size of that to what I want. I would need to crop the picture as well, and so I would crop that in this window, and there I'd crop that down. I would no longer maintain its format. I would simply move these across and down, just as in the other software in Resolve. So there it is, it's exactly the same thing. That's now moving in its window, and if I go back to the picture in picture clip, where are we? Picture in picture, and now I see again that this is now movable, and I've done the same thing exactly as I had done in Resolve. So everything's possible in both pieces of software. In some cases, one is easier than the other. Save my project, and eventually I'm going to go to File, Render As, choose my render format, an MP4 file. I would normally go down and choose, say, 1920 by 1080 by 25p, 25 progressive, and that gives me a lovely full HD render of the project. I won't do it now, but that's what it does. In Resolve, you go to the Delivery tab, and then you choose the render that you want, MP4, H.264, and so on, the quality features and so on. You put it into your render queue, and then down the bottom you press render all, and whatever's in that queue gets rendered in order. Very, very simple, very similar in both cases. And so there you have the comparison of how I worked in both pieces of software. There was a bit of a learning curve for me in Resolve because it's new and somewhat different, and I did find the instruction manuals very comprehensive, but actually rather difficult to navigate. So I think I found a lot of useful tutorials online, and they solved my problems fairly fast. And occasionally a phone call to someone at Blackmagic Design was really useful to sort things out. They were very helpful. So the short answer is both pieces of software can do really whatever you need fairly easily. I still find Vegas to be slightly simpler and to use slightly fewer steps to get to the things I need, but that's partly a function of my inexperience in Resolve and my long experience in Vegas. But honestly, you can't compare this with any other NLE. Resolve being free for the basic version, but which is virtually fully featured. It has all of the modules intact. It just can't go beyond 4K resolution or control the hardware systems within Resolve. But for nothing, it's the most extraordinarily good value. You simply can't beat the value. And okay, there's a learning curve. Doesn't matter, you're learning all the time. So I proved that with a little bit of a learning curve to climb, I was able to do everything I wanted to do in Resolve. It took longer, of course, because I'm inexperienced in Resolve and I'm very experienced in Vegas, but that would be an unfair comparison. As it stands, Resolve is extremely powerful, wonderful, and it has the huge advantage of being free. So, off you go to Blackmagic Design, download the free version and have a mess around and see how you go.